Hello, U.S. history students. Okay, so last week we began looking at exploration and colonization. We looked at the three groups: the Spanish, who did not come to stay. They wanted to get money and they wanted to leave quickly, and they had the worst relationship with the Native Americans. We looked at the French, who were interested in trading furs up in Canada and who had the best relationship with Native Americans. And then we looked at the English, who came to stay, and they have a very mixed relationship with Native Americans. As long as everything is going okay, they're very good with the Native Americans. When things go bad, they don't get along with the Native Americans. Okay. Now, what our focus on, and then we filled out that map of the 13 original British colonies because our focus is going to be on Britain since we in Virginia were part of the British colony. So our focus is going to be on Britain. They stayed and we were a British colony. So this week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at each of the three sections: New England, Middle, and South, and looking at life in those sections. What was life like in those sections? And we're going to start up at the top with the New England colonies. Okay. So before we get into more descriptive ideas about what New England life was like, let's remind ourselves who were the New England colonies. Okay. And again, these notes you will have to do on your own paper. There is no worksheet or nothing to fill in or anything like that. So just jot them down as we go along. Okay. Now, there are four New England colonies. Okay. They are New Hampshire, which was at the top of the map. Right below New Hampshire was Massachusetts. Then right below Massachusetts, you had two small colonies. The smallest was Rhode Island. And then right next door was Connecticut. So when we talk about the New England colonies, this is who we're talking about: New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Okay. Now, if we were together in class, I would ask you, describe for me, okay, what does New England look like? Geographically, what does New England look like? Okay. So here it is on the map, the little red area right there. When you think of New England, what images come to mind? Okay. And sometimes people will talk about beaches. Okay. And yes, there are beaches up in New England, but are they like beaches down here in the South? No, they're very rocky. Okay. You have a very, very rocky coast up in New England. Okay. They will talk about things like it's cold up there. Okay. So you don't have a lot of vegetation. It's very, very rocky ground. The temperature is very, very cold. There's not a lot of agriculture up there. The one thing that does seem to grow in abundance in New England are trees. Okay. In fact, in the fall, people love to go to New England to see the changes in the leaves. Okay. And then, like I said, people mention it being cold. That's why it's rocky. Okay, because you don't have the fertile farms that you're going to find in other parts of the country. The reason I ask this question is because you have to understand the environment dominates life and the economy of New England. Please be sure you understand me and you hear me saying that. The environment dominates life and the economy in New England. Okay. I believe one of the questions on the quiz on New England is, what factor impacts life and the economy in New England? The number one factor that does that is the environment. Okay. So environment impacts life and the economy in New England. Now, speaking of this economy, what exactly goes on in New England? How do people make money? Well, there are 5 economic activities that I want to highlight. Okay. And all we have to do is list them. Okay. All we have to do is list them. There are 5 economic activities that I want to mention here. All right. Number 1, because of the coast. Okay. New England is located on the coast. Because of the coastline, one of the big economic activities is fishing. Okay. There's going to be a lot of money found in fishing. Okay. Another big economic activity, and we looked at it on a picture here just a second ago, is lumber, cutting down trees. Okay. Lumbering is a major component. So we got fishing, we got lumber, trees. Okay. Now, let's combine those two. How can we combine fishing and lumber? Well, to go fishing, you need a boat. And to build a boat, you need wood. So shipbuilding is going to be the third major economic activity. Okay? Because how else are you going to go fishing? Okay? So we got fishing, we got lumber, we're going to combine those two, we get shipbuilding. And then the last two economic activities, and please be sure you get down the definitions. Listen to me when I say them, okay? They're not going to appear on the screen, but please be sure you write them down. The first is subsistence farming, okay? Because the ground is so hard and rocky in New England, you're not going to find the profitable small farms that you're going to find in the middle colonies. You're definitely not going to find the profitable plantations that you're going to find in the South. When we talk about subsistence farming, we are talking about farming enough for your family. Okay? You are not going to make money off of subsistence farming. It is small farming, farming enough for your family. Now, what you might be able to do is take some of what you grow and trade with your neighbors. Like, let's say you're growing corn and your neighbors are growing beans, and you can work out a trade. But subsistence farming is very small farming, just enough for your family. Now, later down the road, what New England becomes known for, the last economic activity, is manufacturing. Okay? Manufacturing is making things in large quantities in factories by machines. Okay? Manufacturing is making large quantities of things in factories by machines. Okay? And you got to know both manufacturing and subsistence farming for your quiz. Okay, so subsistence farming, extremely small farming, just enough for your family. Manufacturing is making large quantities of a good in a factory with machines. In fact, as we go through, and we talked about terminology last week, New England is going to be associated with the North. And when we get to the Civil War, the North is going to be known for its manufacturing and its industry. And it starts all the way back here with colonization and exploration. Okay, so this manufacturing, this industry, we're going to hear about it again as we move throughout the course. Now, all of these economic activities are very labor intensive. I mean, if you go fishing, it takes a lot of effort to go fishing. You're going to be fishing for long hours, especially if you want to make a profit. Cutting down trees, building ships, growing even small crops in rocky soil, working with machines in factories, all those are very labor intensive activities. That is because, and remember, the Puritans settled Massachusetts first, which is in New England. That is because the Puritans value hard work. So these economic activities we see should not be surprising when you think about the characteristics of Puritans. They value hard work. You will often hear the phrase, the Puritan work ethic. That means I'm going to work as hard as I can until I get the job done. Okay? So they value hard work and thrift. Okay? Some people would refer to thrift as cheapness, but I think it's better if we refer to it as you want to get as many things as possible for the value of a dollar. You want your dollar to work hard for you. Okay? That's what thrift is. All right. You want to get the best value. You want to get as much for your money as possible. So Puritans value hard work and thrift. Okay. Getting the job done, but then being smart about it and getting the largest amount possible for your money. Okay. Now, switching gears, moving away from the economy, the other big thing about New England, it is dominated by religion. Okay. Um, we talked about the economy, life is going to be influenced by the environment. The other big thing that dominates New England is its religion. Okay. Especially the social aspects of life. Okay. It is a society based on religion. That's why the Pilgrims, the Puritans came here. They were looking for religious freedom, they were looking for religious tolerance. Unfortunately, they were not willing to show that freedom and that tolerance to others. They were intolerant of dissenters. And intolerant means you just can't stand them. It's not, and you can still be you can still dislike somebody and be tolerant. You can still put up with them. But the Puritans, the Pilgrims, were intolerant of dissenters. In fact, they said, look, if you don't want to do what we want you to do, you leave, you go to Rhode Island. Okay. That's how intolerant they were of dissenters, is do not stay here, go. All right. And that's where they end up going, is they end up going to Rhode Island. Okay. And like I said, and I've said this a lot, that's what's ironic about all this, is both the Pilgrims and the Puritans and the dissenters challenged established religions and governments. The Pilgrims and the Puritans challenged the established religion in England, the Church of England. That's why they came here looking for freedom of religion and freedom and religious tolerance. Then you had the dissenters. They were challenging the religion and government of the Puritans and Pilgrims. That's why they end up getting kicked out and going to Rhode Island. So both groups are challenging established religions and governments, and yet they can't get along. Okay? One group is intolerant of the other. All right? The Pilgrims and Puritans are intolerant of the dissenters. Now, if we were in class, okay, I really have fun talking about the next thing, and that is the Great Awakening. Okay? In the late 1600s, 1700s, early 1700s, there is a religious revival in New England called the Great Awakening. Churches began to say, we have fallen astray. We have gone away from our teachings, our Christian teachings. Keep in mind, these are Christian churches. We have gone astray. We have lost touch with our Christian heritage. Okay. And the Great Awakening was an attempt to refine that. Okay. Like, we need to find that again. We need to get in touch with our religious heritage better. Okay. It is a religious movement among evangelical religions. Okay. And here's another term that you need to know: evangelical. Okay. Evangelical is often characterized by a desire to spread the word of God to others. Okay. If you're evangelical, you want to spread the word of God to others. Okay. So that they can be saved. Two of the best groups that are often referred to as evangelical are Baptists and Methodists. So the idea behind the Great Awakening is, not only do we need to get back in touch with our religious heritage, our Christian heritage, but then we need to spread that heritage to others. That's the evangelical part of it. Okay, and you have groups like the Methodists and the Baptists emerge. Now, one of the biggest names in the Great Awakening, and this is why I wish I was in class, because we could do this together. One of the biggest names in the Great Awakening is Jonathan Edwards. Okay. And Jonathan Edwards published a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Okay. It is what we would now call fire and brimstone. And Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God talked about how vile we were in the eyes of God and how we stink. Okay, it talks about our stench. All right, and how we deserve to be punished. In fact, he uses images like spiders being hung over flames and stuff like that. That's the type of imaging or images that he uses. And it strikes fear in people. This is why people say, oh my goodness, we have gone astray and we need to go back to our religious heritage. Okay. So Jonathan Edwards had this sermon. And what's interesting, what's ironic about that, okay, is when Edwards presented it, Edwards today, when people give that sermon, they put a lot of, you've heard readings of it, maybe you've heard readings of it in English class and stuff like that. People put a lot of emotion and a lot of passion into it and stuff like that. Edwards was not like that. He was kind of dull. And he would talk in a very monotonous voice, and our sins stink before heaven, and God is holding us like a spider on a web above an open flame, and where we're going to be punished and sent to hell, where there is nothing but gnashing of teeth and sorrow. He talked in this dull, monotonous voice, which shows you how powerful the sermon is, because people started freaking out. In fact, when he first gave it to his own congregation, he had to stop 2 or 3 times and get everybody calmed down. And he did it in a monotonous voice. Okay. So that is kind of the idea of the Great Awakening, and why it happened is people began to fear for their salvation. And not only did they want to get back in touch with their religious heritage, but then they want to spread it to others so that others will be saved. Okay. That's the evangelical part of it. All right. So that's the Great Awakening. The other aspect that we see religion play another important aspect, and that is in the government. Okay, we talk about this when we get to Plymouth in a little bit more detail, but the Plymouth government, the government of Massachusetts, is the Mayflower Compact. Okay, the Mayflower Compact was signed by the men on the Mayflower. It formed a covenant community. A covenant is a binding agreement. Okay. And the men pledged themselves and their families to agree by the laws of government. And the laws of government were going to be based on their religious laws. Okay? So they agreed to follow the laws of government, which were going to be based on religion. And with a covenant, if you break the covenant, something bad is going to happen to you. Okay, that's the understanding. If one side breaks a covenant, there will be some form of punishment. All right, but it's a covenant community based on religious laws. They agree to uphold the law of the government, and they agree to uphold their law of religion, and they are one and the same. Their religious upbringing is going to influence their government. Okay. Now, within the government comes an interesting aspect that we're going to see later on down the road in this country, and that is the idea of direct democracy. In New England, they were called town meetings. Okay. And they are exactly what they say they are. The whole town would gather together and they would discuss issues. Okay. And they would vote on things. Now, I should point out that even though the whole town could gather, when it came down to it, it was the men that were making the decision, not the women, and certainly not the children. Okay. But don't assume that women didn't have a voice, because you better believe after the meeting was over and the wife and the husband went back home, you can believe the wife was saying, hey, honey, what do you think about this idea? Oh, really? Well, I think this. So don't assume that women didn't have an influence or didn't have a voice. They couldn't vote, but I definitely think they were doing things behind the scenes that were influencing how their husbands voted, because again, the family was a part of the community. Okay, and when the men signed the Mayflower Compact, they were agreeing that they and their families would abide by the governmental rules. Okay, so town meetings, everybody could show up. Only the men voted. Okay, but you better believe I really do think that the women had a voice in these meetings. Okay. By the way, the town meetings are going to be especially associated with New England. Okay, we're not going to talk about town meetings in the middle colonies or the southern colonies. They are only found in New England. Okay. Now, that's it for the notes, okay, on New England. We are going to move to the middle colonies next, okay? So we're working our way geographically down the 13 colonies, and we're heading toward the middle colonies next.